Good evening.
There we go. Good evening, Rabbi. How you doing?
Uh, yeah, it's appropriate for the 9 days. All these mishaps fits right into the scheme.
God willing, everything goes smooth from now on.
Uh, Okay, that should be the worst thing.
Indeed.
As I told you, my elevator already broke, and
Is it back in order now?
yeah, and now at the shul, the air conditioner is not working.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like one thing after another. Okay. Yeah, so I think we're gonna do the Shulchan Aruch because we didn't finish it last time. So it says, I'll review the whole thing. It's a little bit long, but Kira shehi asuya kekdera. Let me just make sure. Yeah. So anyway, let me see. A second. Right. So it says like this: "V'tanur afilu im musach b'kashu b'bava." When it comes to an oven, even if it was lit with straw, asur afilu ismoklo, you're not even allowed to put something next to it. Afilu imu garuf katum, even if it's raked out. So that's because of the intense right heat of the oven. And says the Rama, that's only when the oven is hot, right? You can't touch it. So it says kol sheken she'asur lishot bo o al gaba. All the more so you can't put something inside there, right, or on top of it. So as we said, right, we're talking about their ovens. They were very hot. What about kopach, right? So kopach, as we said, has only one place. Im husak bakash. So if it was lit with straw, so then it's considered to be like a stove. The gifet betzin, but if it was done with the olive pits or the wood, then it's like a tanur. Then it's like an oven. So why is that? Because this thing is like hotter than one and not as hot as the other. It's in the middle, so therefore the rule is also in the middle. Okay. So it says if he forgot and he put it there. If it's fully cooked, this dish, mutar, you're allowed to eat it. Even if it's good, it's congealing and good. Good for it. If it's something which you started to cook but didn't cook all the way, asur, it's forbidden. Ad Motzi Shabbat, right? Until the Shabbat goes out. But if he transgressed, right, and he left it there, both of them are forbidden. And then says the Rama, Ad bikadesh yasu, right? You have to wait also the time that it takes to cook it. After Shabbat, ve'im echazira eno yudi b'Shabbat. What about if it was returned by a goy on Shabbat? You know kishachach v'shahah. Considered to be like the same as when he forgot and left it there. Ve'im echaziro Israel. But if it was returned by a Jew, you know, then it's considered like he did it on purpose. Okay. Israel, and if it was returned by the Jew, you know, it's like as we said, right? He transgressed. We said that. If it's right, congealing and bad for it, mutar lo ne'ena min ha'isur. It's allowed. Why? Because he's not really benefiting from the prohibition. Goes on to say, some say that if it was cooked like machal ben drusai, which we said was like half cooked, you know, or third. Two different opinions, right? And so some say that if it was cooked that much, right now this is the other opinion, right? Hananiah. Right? So there was this guy, right, who used to eat like his food very rare. That's his name, right? Ben Drusai. That's why they called this name. Or let's say it was fully cooked, but it's getting dry and bad for it. So you're allowed to put on top of the kira, the stove. So then says the Rama, oh, afilu al gab tanur, even on top of the oven, even that's allowed. Afilu husak begifet ve'etzim, even if it was lit with wood or with the olive pits, afilu ena grufa ktuma, even if it's not raked out. Below uskera grufa ktuma, the usak bekashu glava. So he says the reason why they mentioned this, that it was raked out or lit with the straw, ela, rather only kishitchil litbashel, when it started to cook. And didn't get to the level of ben dusai. Same thing also, if he removed that pot from it, and then and then comes to return it now, b'Shabbat on Shabbat. So it says, but if he forgot and he put the dish there, שהתחיל להתבשל, it started to cook, ולא הגיע למאכל בן דוסי, and didn't get to this level, אסור, then it's forbidden. ואינו צריך לומר אם עבר בשעה. I don't need to tell you in a case where he transgressed and he left it there, which is even worse. So says Rama, right? So he says the custom is like the last opinion, right? So what does that mean? That we're lenient according to the Rama. That's only if it right if you left it there. So the pot is resting on a chair made out of iron or agav avanim or on stones. It's not touching the coals. But if you insulate it right on top of the coals, we said then everybody agrees it's forbidden. Okay, we have the Rama here. ויש אומרים, אפילו אם קדרה עומדת על גב האש ממש, some say that even if the pot is standing on the fire right directly, בכל זמן שהיא מגולה למעלה, if it's open on the top, לא מקרה תמונה, it's not called insulation. Therefore it's allowed. That's the custom, he says. So what is he saying, right? That if the top is open on the top, if the pot is open on the top, that's not called insulation and it's allowed. רק שנזהרים לנתקן קצת קודם השבת. This is only that what? That they're careful to remove them a little bit before Shabbat מן האש from the fire, כדי שיוכל ישראל להסירו משם, in order that the Jew should be able to remove it from there. ואם לא נתקן מן האש, and if it wasn't removed from the fire, נמצאו על גב האש בשבת, and they were found on top of the fire on Shabbat, יש להסירו משם, you should remove it from there, על ידי, by way of a goy. ואם לקה אינו יהודי, and if there's no goy there, מותר לישראל להסירו, then it's allowed for the Jew to remove it משם from there, ויזהר שיקחנו משם בנחת, and he should be careful, take it from there gently, ולא ינענע גחלים, and don't move around the coals. ואז, so it says then, אף אם ינענען קצת, if he will actually even move them a little bit, coals, דבר שאינו מתכוון הוא, it's not really, he doesn't intend to do so, and therefore it's allowed. Okay, so it's a long Shulchan Aruch. I'm going to review this, it's a lot of stuff here. One more time. So it starts like this, right? Kira shehi asuya kikdera. You have your, as we said, right? You got your stove, and there the pots go on top, right? In those holes. And it's got two holes like that. So as we said, right? If he lit it with olive pits, shehu solet shel zetim, or betzim, or with wood, asur liten alea tafshil. So you're not allowed to put the cooked dish on top of that. During before Shabbat, to leave it there. Unless it's fully cooked. So if you got those two conditions, right? Fully cooked and congealing in bad. So why is that? Because now we're not concerned at all that he's going to come and stir it up, those coals, because there's no point in it. Or let's say it was raw, wasn't cooked at all. Since it's raw, so then he diverts his attention from it until tomorrow. He's not going to eat it tonight. So according to this, right, like we mentioned before, if you're putting some hot water, right, it was already boiled. Right? Since now it's bad for it, to congeal. So therefore, we would say that it's allowed to put it on the open flame. So if that's the case, you could do this also on your stove. Right? Put like a urn, which is mechanical, right? Not electric. Just fill it up with water and put it on top of your stove, your grate, and it'll keep it hot. And you don't need to put anything, under it, right? Any kind of metal plate, all kinds of stuff, the blech, this, you don't need that. Why? Because it's mistamek veralo. It's bad for it as it congeals. So that's the story. That would be a nice, convenience for some people. Or, right, the other option is that we're talking about something which is raw. So we're not concerned you're going to stir the coals, as we said. And therefore, you could put it also in open flame. So for these things, you don't really need the blech. You don't need it. A lot of people don't know these halachot, so they think you do need it, but actually you don't. So then we got the other case, which is But if it got partially cooked, right, but not all the way, if it wasn't cooked, totally cooked, but it's still congealing and good for it. So then we're concerned he's going to stir the coals. So therefore he can't leave it there, right, like that. Unless right, he removed the ash of the coals. Or covered the coals. So another solution is, as we said, right? You put like a raw piece in there, something raw. Then we say it's allowed, as if like all of it was raw. Because by way of this, he diverts his attention from it. Even if it's not raked out. Even if it's not raked out, you're still allowed, right? Even if it's not raked out, you can put something next to it, right? On the side, on the outside. Okay. Even if it, but if it was lit up with straw, then you can put stuff on it even if it's not raked out. Because these fuels, are flimsy. They're not really so strong. Okay, so until then, I'm pretty much okay with this. If you have any questions, let me know. So then he goes on in the Ramah. Right? So then we get to another case, which is you have two stoves, right? One next to the other, right? Juxtaposed, touching, and there's a wall in between them. Made out of clay. One is raked out, and the other one is not. So the one that's raked out, you can put it there. Even though it adds heat, there's added heat coming from the other one, right? Which is not raked out. Still, it's allowed. Okay. So I'll move on. The tanur, what about the tanur? The oven. Even if it was done with straw, right? Asul, okay, you're not even allowed to put next to it. So as we said, right, with the oven, we're very machmir. Even if it's raked out. Right? So that's only if it's hot though, right? That's what the Ramah says. You can't touch it. So we already said, right, that our ovens, are not that hot. So we can be lenient with them as if it was a stove. The call and all this is when it's too hot to touch, right? Otherwise, no. All the more so you can't put it on top, right? Or inside the oven. That's what's even hotter there. Okay, great. Let's move on. Kopach, shehu makom shpitat kedera achad. Now we're getting to the kopach, right? Which is the single one. If it was done with straw and stubble, hay, then it's considered to be like a stove. Like if it was done with olive pits or wood, then it's like an oven. So it's hotter, than this and colder than that. It's in the middle. Okay. So says the Ramah, as we mentioned, our ovens are like they're like a stove. Now we're getting to a different thing, right? Different aspect of it, which is what about if he forgot it and left it there? In other words, it's not allowed to leave it there, but he forgot. So the question is, are you allowed to eat that food or not? So he says, if it's something which is fully cooked, mutar, it's allowed to eat it. Even if it's congealing and good for it. Something which already started to cook, but it wasn't fully cooked, asur, ad motzi Shabbat. Then it's going to be forbidden until motzi Shabbat.
Is that even if it's Yatzaletipo? Not Yatzaletipo. Even if it's half cooked?
So I'll read this one more. I'm sorry. I'll read this one more time. Okay, one more time.
No, you were saying if it's fully cooked, and then if it's not cooked, so even if it's half cooked, it's not considered permitted.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go over it so I can we can remember all details.
Okay.
That it says like this, right? If he forgot and left it there, right? So if it's fully cooked, that's what he's saying, right? Mutar, it's allowed. So what does that mean? You can eat it. It's fully cooked. Even if it's congealing and good. But if it already started to cook, right? But not fully cooked, asur Shabbat. It's going to be forbidden until Shabbat goes out. And if he did it on purpose, right? Left it there, so then it's going to be forbidden in both cases. So I'm sorry again. What was your question?
Because you said if it was fully cooked, you can't eat it. If you did it by accident. But if it's not fully
Just
cooked,
the opposite, right? When it's fully cooked, we're more lenient.
More lenient, right? It's permitted. But if it's
right,
not,
we eat it, yes.
My question is if it's, what is it, bender? So what is that term that if it's half cooked or
right? Machal ben drusai, right? Partially cooked.
So does that count as being cooked or not cooked?
So according to the first opinion, that's not really called cooked.
Okay, so that would not be permitted then.
Right.
Okay, that was my question.
So then, in that case, you have to wait till Shabbat goes out.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so but if you did it on purpose, right, then it's forbidden in either scenario. Doesn't matter. Even if it's fully cooked. Okay, great. So let's move on. Says the Ramah, right? He says you also have to wait till the time that it cooks, right? Also that time you got to do. So let's say it cooks in an hour, so you got to wait another hour. So now we're getting to a different issue. The aim chazira, right? I know we do with Shabbat. What about if the goy returned it on Shabbat, right? So now we're getting into a different gear over here, right? We're not even talking anymore about leaving it there. We're talking about returning it, right? After you already took it out. So when do you return it on Shabbat, right? That's the thing. Can you return it on Shabbat? This is the question. So he says, right, what about if the goy did it? So then it's like you forgot, you know? So what does that mean? If it's fully cooked, it will be allowed. So why is that? Because when it's fully cooked, right, it's only a rabbinical problem. It's not from the Torah. But the problem is, when it's not fully cooked, it's from the Torah already, because this goy is now cooking the dish. And he did it for you, so you're not allowed to get benefit from it. But what about if it was returned by a Jew? Considered to be like he did it on purpose. Right? So therefore, we're going to be more stringent with that. That means it'll be forbidden, right, in any scenario. If it was returned by a Jew. So says the Ramam, if it's right congealing and bad for it, mutar, then it's allowed. Right? Even if it was done by the Jew. That's what he's saying. Why? Because he didn't really benefit from this, that person didn't benefit. Why? Because it's congealing and getting ruined like that, so who wants that? So therefore, since there's no benefit, it's allowed. What does that mean? But diavad, you could eat it. Okay, that's the Ramah. Now we're going to the next piece, right? Home stretch over here. Okay, let me just get some water. I'm sorry, I'm so thirsty. The heat is incredible. Okay, so we'll continue here. It says, "V'yesh omrim shekol et shenitbashel k'machal ben drusai." Some say, now this is the other opinion, right? Hanania. Some say that if it was cooked already, machal ben drusai, or shenitbashel kol, it was fully cooked, and it's still good for it to congeal. Mutar le'ashoto al gav kira. You can put it on the stove, right? So we don't paskin like this, but there is an opinion like this, and it's a prominent opinion because there are several Rishonim that hold like this. But Shulchan Aruch doesn't go like this, basically. Let's see, right? Until the end. So, also on top of the oven as well. Same thing. So why is that? Because we said, right, our ovens are not so hot. So anyway, if it was heated by, lit by wood or olive pits, even if it's not raked out, tuma. ולא הוזכרה גרופה וכתומה והוסק בקש וגבבה. So it says, when was raking and and mentioned? Or being lit with the straw? That's only when it started to cook. It didn't get to ben drusai. But if it did, according to this opinion, it's okay. Same thing also applies if he took the pot, right? Removed it. Now he wants to return it, right? Like we said. Shabbat. He wants to return it on Shabbat. So just to remind you, how do we do that, right? What's our halacha today? So if you have a plata, right, or if you have a stove with a metal plate, are you allowed to return it there? So the answer is, if it's totally dry or mostly dry, you're allowed to return it, even if it got cold. Why is that? Because you can't cook something twice, when it's solid. But when it's liquid, you can. So therefore, if it's mostly broth, like soup, for instance, right? Then you can't return it. If it got cold. So the only way you could return it if it's still hot, too hot to touch. That's all it is. But here's the thing, right? That this hinges on these two different opinions that we learned. Because according to the first opinion, you can only do that if it's fully cooked. Right? That's how we paskin. But then according to Hanania, if it's machal ben drusai, so you can return it, even though it's not fully cooked. So that's the difference, right? How do we go? We go like the first opinion. That's only when it's fully cooked. So now he goes into a different mode, right? Ve'im shachach v'shaha tabshil. What about if he left it there by mistake, right? The sheitchil itbashil, and it started to cook already. According to this opinion, right? According to Hananiah, if you didn't get to machal ben drusai, asur, you're not allowed to have it. According to the first opinion, that would be like if it's fully cooked. And I don't need to tell you, right, if he did it on purpose. For sure, he cannot have it. Okay, very interesting. So says the Ramah, right? He says the custom is to be lenient, like the achrona, like the second opinion, Hananiah. But the truth is, nowadays, I don't think anybody's lenient today about this. Let me just see what it says here in the Biur Halacha. So pretty much he's saying, right, like the Ramah, that custom is to be lenient. But honestly, nowadays, I don't see anybody who's lenient with this. But I'm not exactly looking in people's houses, but from what I hear, they're not lenient. But I have to check that out. I got to look into it a little bit. But by us, the Sfardim, we're not lenient with this. But you know what it is? In my rabbi's book, Chazon Ovadia, he writes about this, issue at length. And so maybe next time, B'ezras Hashem, we'll look at it, and see what he says there. There's a little bit more that we need to know, about this. A little bit more information. So B'ezras Hashem, next time we'll get into that. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak u'baruch. Laila tov. See you tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem.